Chapter 6, Part 1. How bad is the problem? Before I get into that, you guys, just another little housekeeping here. My neighbor has a big tractor, and he looks like he's cutting a garden or something in his yard, which he has every right to do. But I am recording right now, so you may hear a tractor in the distance. I don't think we can edit it out. Sorry, I hope it doesn't hurt your experience, but I can't wait for him to be done. I don't know how long it'll take. So there you go. So how bad is the problem? So I purposefully did not give any statistics, which is unusual for an author. Usually they come out and say, well, in this year it was this many people were addicted, and this year it was that many people were addicted. And it probably would have been fairly easy to gather that data somehow, but there's two reasons why I didn't do that. Number one is I'm lazy, which I completely admit. I did not want to do that. But really the reason is that I didn't believe anybody needed any statistics because they can see it with their own eyes. And I went into the different generational things. My grandfather, what was it like when my grandfather was in high school? How many people were drinking? How many people were using and abusing drugs? And then I went to my dad. How many when he was in high school? What was it like? And then I went to when I was in high school. And then I went to when my children were in high school. And so on. And I don't think anybody who's been around on this planet for very long, who's watched this problem, can disagree that the problem is getting worse drastically, despite massive amounts of money being thrown at the problem and all these initiatives and all these different things. It's just getting worse. The availability of drugs to children is unbelievable. They can use their internet apps. They can use Snapchat on their phone or Instagram to get drugs. This is happening all the time. If you didn't know that, you should know that. The police seem to be at a loss. Back in the day when I remember, I keep saying back in the day, but I remember when you would hear about a drug bust, right, in a small town or something like that. And it's like, okay, they got the drug dealer. They got the drug dealer in the town, the one or two of the drug dealers in the town. They arrested him. They kicked in the door. They took all their drugs. They went to jail, and they cleaned up the streets. And they cleaned up their town. Maybe there was another sort of smaller guy, soldier, drug dealer that was going to try to sort of take over, but they were watching him too, and he knew better, so they made sure the streets were cleaned up. I remember when that used to happen, and the citizens would be behind it, and the police would be given a medal or awarded, and the mayor would come out and, good job, guys, we got rid of this guy from our town, send him off to jail. That doesn't seem to be happening anymore. I believe the police are at a loss. Even if they manage to bust drug dealers, they seem to be out on the streets right away, or there seem to be so many that it's almost impossible to really do something about the problem. How humiliating and demoralizing for the police who want to keep the streets safe, who don't want all these people dealing drugs to children, but their either hands are tied or they do not have the resources to tackle the problem the way it needs to be tackled. And the government does not really seem to be very concerned about this. You'll hear people say talking points once in a while, but that does not seem to be a very big concern of theirs, even though any of us who've been alive for a while can see that things are so drastically worse, it's almost unbelievable to think about. So, okay, well, why aren't they solving the problem? I go into these things, and I took a lot of heat on this. What I said, if you remember, is there was two reasons. Two reasons the government is not solving the problem, because there's a lot of smart people in this country, and there's a lot of money. So, okay, well, it's either number one, the government doesn't actually want to solve the problem. Or, number two, the government is completely incompetent and is unable to solve the problem. It's filled with a bunch of bureaucrats who don't know how to run businesses, to run hospitals, to do these kinds of things that will help people. So is it one or is it two? And I said both. And people were like, wow, like take off the tinfoil hat. What are you doing? Really? Government? Maybe they can argue government is incompetent, but hey, come on, don't be so hard on them. But really, you don't think that they want to solve the problem? And I said, yes, that is my feeling. I'm entitled to my opinion. And my opinion is that the government on both sides, I'm not picking one political party over another. I'm from California. You can read into that what you will. But both sides, both political parties, I believe the government is corrupt. And I believe it is corrupted because there are so many special interest groups and lobbying that people go into politics not really to be a representative of the people, but to change the country, the direction of the country, but to get paid, right? You go into Congress, and we see this all the time. We know about this. Some guy goes into Congress, and he makes, I don't know, he's worth $100,000 when he gets into Congress, and by the time he's out 12 years later, he's worth, $19 million. Well, how did that happen? How did that happen on the salary that you get paid as a congressperson? It can't happen unless you are using your insider knowledge to either trade stocks that you know are going to go up based on what you see, or from doing business deals by people who are lobbying for what they want. I love my country. I really do, but I'm not happy with the government. And I think a lot of people that probably resonates with. And that's why I wrote this book to your average everyday American. If they really, really wanted to solve the problem, they would get past their political ideologies. They would come up with, think tanks or whatever, or put together some kind of a plan that everybody can agree on. And I know these days, they don't want any political party to get a win. It's like you can't have this party do well because then that'll look good. We've got to make sure everything they do is terrible. It's so crazy right now what's going on. But I would hope that at some point, some politicians, ideally from both political parties, come together and say, guys, girls, whatever, we got to solve these problems. We got to tackle this addiction issue somehow. And they put together a bipartisan policy and really work on it together. And it's not just dumping money to insurance companies or giving money to pharmaceutical companies or just giving money to a couple of rehabs who happen to be the sister of one of the guys on the committee or whatever. It's actually meaningful change. Or not just throw a ton of money into government resources that are supposed to roll down, for example, just through a Medicaid program where it's being administered by people who have no idea how to run rehabs. They just know they have this checkbook of millions of dollars and they don't know what to do with it. And so then you have to go to your county and you have to try to lobby for it. But then at the county level, those guys, they wanted to go to their cousin's rehab, not your rehab. So it's got to be done in a way that it's fair and that there's not all this grift and corruption. It's unfortunate, but that's the only thing I can really think of. I'm trying to think logically. I'm trying to not be a conspiracy theorist or whatever you want to call it. I'm just trying to look at it logically. Why would things not be changing unless they're purposefully being kept from changing? It doesn't make any sense to me. If I were to take 10 random people, a teacher, a plumber, a computer programmer, a mechanic, just random people. We all get together in a room and we sit down for 3 days to try to figure out a problem. We could probably do it. We could probably come up with some kind of solution that could work. It might not be the best option, the best solution, but I think you put people's heads together and you drop all the BS and say, hey, this is for our country, our children, whoever. We want to do the right thing. They're probably going to be able to walk out of that room in 3 days with some kind of a plan. Way better than anything I've seen come out of the government lately. So I think personally, again, my personal opinion is that there needs to be reform there because it's obvious. If you were, I mean, think about it. We go to work every day. We get taxes taken out of our paycheck. What do we really want? We want roads to drive on that don't have big potholes in them. We want our streets safe so we can take our kids to the park and not worry about getting robbed or something like that. We want to make sure that we don't get invaded by another country and put into slave camps. We want to make sure it's not really that many things. We want to make sure gas isn't $20 a gallon so that we can actually survive. It's not really that much. We want to go to work. We don't want to pay our taxes, but we have to. So we want it to go to something good. I would imagine if it went to something like this where, hey, I go to work and I get taxes taken out, but you know what? The addiction problem is getting much, much better. There's less people addicted. There's less crime. There's all the things that go along with it. There's more people in the workforce contributing. Hey, this is a good thing. That's what governments were supposed to do, right? It was sort of like, and if they didn't, you held them accountable. You threw them out of office. And I just think that needs to be a standard that we hold people to.